In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, God is one. Amen. Well, good morning, everybody. I hope you're having a good day. It is one of those days that is trying to make up its mind what to do. Very, very misty first thing. Quite thick fog. People with their headlights and fog lights on this morning when I came here. But as I arrived up the top of this hill, you could see the sun beginning to burn through that fog. And I think the fog mist has sort of more or less cleared now. There's a light, hazy cloud all over the place, but there we are. That's not going to worry Joan in Lebanon, is it, Joan? God bless you and keep you. I hope you're having a good day today. Probably very busy, working hard. Okay? Good morning, Joey. I have no idea is the answer to your question. As far as I know, it's up for sale. So depending on who buys it, it'll be, whatever they'll do with it. Sunny, a bit windy in Lebanon. Well, that sounds good. Drowning, wool making, good for you. It's very nice, that is. John in Australia, well below us, somewhere down here. Good morning, God bless you and keep you. Blessed Holy Week ahead, indeed. We've got plenty happening here, so each Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday mornings there'll be the Liturgy of the Pre-Sanctified in a monastery, our monastery here in Lincoln, and in the evenings there'll be the Bridegroom Matins on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and then of course the main services will start happening for the rest of the week. And I think probably, therefore, next week there won't be any 10 at 10 because I'll be up to my eyeballs and stuff as it is. I am already. Oh, now it's amazing how many things there are to prepare before Pascha. Anyway, there we go. Christos, good morning. You're at work, difficult to listen. Oh, well, you'll have to listen to it later on if you wish to, but may God bless your work. Alice, good morning. Helliot, sunny but cold Pembrokeshire. Well, it's just cold here. It's not sunny yet, but I have hopes for the day. Either that or I'd quite like it to rain. A long week of drizzle. Clearing up in time for Pascha would be just right. Sunny and dry in Holland. Oh, well. The same every year. Period leading to Holy Week and Easter, always very stressful for Christos. That is a shame. Well, I think that what Satan wants to do is to spoil your Pascha. There's a member of the congregation that I was part of a while ago who every Pascha would arrive in church furiously angry, shouting and raving at everybody. He successfully ruined everybody's Pascha every year. And the next day, his wife would come up the hill and apologize to everybody and say, well, he's been overdoing it with the fasting. It just makes him angry. He's been like a bear with a sore head, so it'll be long later on to apologize to everybody. And this happened every single year. And he didn't learn from it. However, after about 3 years, everybody... And when he'd go out slamming the church door, and everybody would say to each other, Christ is risen, happy Pascha, everybody. So-and-so has just announced there must be Pascha with his anger. Ah, dear, oh dear. Acts chapter 24, verses 10 through 21. Then Paul, after the governor had nodded to him to speak, answered, Inasmuch as I know that you have been for many years a judge of this nation, I do the more cheerfully answer for myself, because you may ascertain that it is no more than 12 days since I went up to Jerusalem to worship, and they neither found me in the temple disputing with anyone, nor inciting the crowd, either in the synagogues or the city. How can they prove the things of which they now accuse me? Nor can they prove the things of which they now accuse me. But this I confess to you, that according to the way which they call a sect, so I worship the God of my fathers, believing all things which are written in the law and in the prophets. I have hope in God, which they themselves also accept, that there will be a resurrection of the dead, both the just and the unjust. This being so, I myself always strive to have a conscience without offense toward God and men. Now, after many years, I came to bring alms and offerings to my nation, in the midst of which some Jews from Asia found me purified in the temple, neither the mob nor the tumult. They ought to have been here before you to object if they had anything against me. Or else let those who are here themselves say, if they found any wrongdoing in me while I stood before the council, unless it is for this one statement which I cried out, standing among them, concerning the resurrection of the dead, I am being judged by you this day. Okay, so there we have St. Paul beginning to make his argument to dear old Felix, who's a corrupt judge, as we well know. I'll see tomorrow, what day is it? Yeah, tomorrow, that he's after money. Anyway, he won't get money. Poor old him. So which he probably bought himself hell. Verse 10. Then Paul, after the governor had nodded to him to speak, answered, Inasmuch as I know that you have been for many years a judge of this nation, I do more cheerfully answer for myself. So Paul doesn't use flattering words, as did Tertullus, as we read yesterday. He acknowledges that Festus has been governor for, we think, about 8 or 9 years by this time. So if St. Paul had been seditious, Festus would have had plenty of time to discover that that was the case, and he would have known it all too well. But St. Paul has not been seditious, so St. Paul is saying, you know as well as I do, that I've not done anything at all against the Roman occupation. I've got a really dry sore throat this morning, but there we go. Because, verse 11, you may ascertain that it is no more than 12 days since I went up to Jerusalem to worship. So St. Paul has already been with Festus for several days. So he was only he's been with him for 7 days, hasn't he? So he was only in Jerusalem for 5 days by the time the Jews became angry with him. And as anybody would know who's ever tried to cause a revolution, this is not time to gather together people. I haven't done that, but I know they're a slow burning thing. Not enough to cause any sort of revolt. So he's pointing out, what they're saying it's just nonsense, really, isn't it? You can see for yourselves. Good morning, Miss Connie, or rather good evening to you. God bless you and keep you. Verse 12. And they neither found me in the temple disputing with anyone, nor inciting the crowd, either in the synagogues or in the city. So St. Paul is saying, indeed, I was living quietly. He was certainly not energizing anybody else in sedition or encouraging sedition or being seditious himself. Not in the temple, not in the synagogues, and not in the city of Jerusalem. So none of those places where he might have been expected to whip up a crowd. He has very definitely lived a quiet life, deliberately and definitely lived a quiet life, because he is there for a particular job, to bring money to the apostles, as we'll discover in a minute. You'll remember he went around Asia collecting money, asking for money to be brought to him so that he could take this up to Jerusalem. Verse 13, and we're entering into St. Paul's response to the charges now. Nor can they prove the things of which they now accuse me. And you remember what those are from yesterday. So what then is the problem? Paul is saying here, I'm leaving it really to the priests to prove what they want to say. I'm not going to let myself be drawn into all of that nonsense. They can't prove it because I haven't done anything wrong, he's saying. So Paul is sort of dismissing the Jews' charges. And then he goes through between verse 14 to 17 what his basic defense is. Okay, so here we are, verse 14. But this I confess to you, that according to the way which they call a sect, so I worship the God of my fathers, believing all things which are written in the law and in the prophets. So in verse 14, he says, the first problem is that I follow a group within Judaism. And at this point, Christianity and Judaism had not separated their ways. They were essentially the same thing. And rather like nowadays, you have different groups within Judaism. So Christianity was also a group, but still within Judaism. In those days, you had the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and you had the Essenes and various zealot groups and others like that. All of them though, inside Judaism and recognizing each other within Judaism. And they argued like mad. So he's saying, number one, I am within that group, which they're saying is a sect, it's outside this group. But I'm saying it's within the group, and we follow the way, the old name for Christianity. And I agree, he's saying, I do follow the way, but, and here we come to a whole series of buts, but he worships the same God and keeps the law and the prophets. Then verse 15, I have hope in God, which they themselves also accept, that there will be a resurrection of the dead, both the just and the unjust. So, but number two, he hopes in the resurrection, not only of the good, but also the evil, which was a standard doctrine within Pharisaical Judaism and among the Essenes and among some of the zealot groups, but not, of course, amongst the Sadducees, who are there in force. So St. Paul is trying to whip them up into an anger before Festus to make it clear that this is a religious dispute, not a political dispute. And as a religious and not political dispute, Festus is not going to be interested. Verse 16, this being so, I myself always strive to have a conscience without offense before God and men. So the next but is, I might follow the way, but, I behave in a way in order to keep a clean conscience before God and before everybody else, whoever they might be. So he's saying to Festus, there's nothing at all that I'm doing that you should be upset about. Verse 17. Now, after many years, I came to bring alms and offerings to my nation. So this is another but, really. If somebody is trying to organize a revolt against the Romans, against the Jewish authorities, they're hardly likely to be bringing money to help those people in need. And you remember there was a famine about to take place in Jerusalem. He's bringing offerings from all those different churches that he's been missionizing in. And that is for the nation of the Jews. Now, it's interesting, it's not just for the church, which you might expect. This is for everybody living in Jerusalem. And of course, if he's been away for many years, then he hasn't had time to foment a revolution against the Romans in Jerusalem. Okay, so that's how far we've come with that. And then he says, okay, so what really is the problem? Now, Festus, I'm standing here before you. They've said all sorts of things about me, but I'm going to tell you now what the problem is. Verse 18, as he did that, in the midst of which some Jews from Asia found me purified in the temple, neither with a mob nor with a tumult. So the Asiatic Jews, who are the ones who found him in the temple, they're the ones who kicked up a great deal of dust about him because they were angry about what he had done in places like Ephesus. But meanwhile, Paul was going about his business as an ordinary law-abiding Jew in an ordinary law-abiding way. And he says, verse 19, they, the Asiatic Jews, ought to have been here before you to object if they had anything against me. So if they've got a problem with me, let them come and tell you. Okay? Where are they? They've gone, they don't seem to have any problem anymore, but they're the ones who captured me and brought me to the attention of the Romans, who then took me into bondage. Okay? Verse 20, or else let those who are here themselves say if they found any wrongdoing in me when I stood before the council. So what about this lot? I stood before the council. They couldn't find any charge. Not at that point. They were just livid because I happened to be me. That's basically what St. Paul is saying here. It must be one of those days for Festus when you get up and think, what did I do to deserve this? You know how it is? I remember how it was when I was teaching, sometimes even now, when people bring a complaint about another kid or about a teacher, you're sitting there thinking, there's no way of solving this problem because all they're saying is, we don't like them. And there's no good reason for not liking them. You need to kiss and make up, you lot. But they're not going to. And Festus must be sitting there thinking, if I let Paul go, those Jews are going to be livid, and this is going to be yet another thing they're going to hold against me. But I can't kill him because he hasn't done anything wrong. So what am I going to do? And as so often happens to people who are weak or corrupt, you sort of kick the can down the road a bit and say, well, somebody else can pick it up. And that's exactly what Festus is going to do, in fact. That's exactly what he did do. But Paul then says, verse 21, that the nub of the problem is this. Unless it is for one statement which I cried out, standing among them, concerning the resurrection of the dead, I am being judged by you this day. Now, the thing that particularly the Sadducees had against Christianity, well, not just the fact that they didn't like Jesus rocking the boat. You know, they were quite happy to carry on with their own corrupt ways, but the Lord did things like take a whip and clear out all the money changers in the temple and those who were buying and selling within there. And that, understandably, the Sadducees who ran the temple, along with the scribes and the Levites, were not happy about. So the priests, Levites, a lot of the scribes, furious with him for doing this, because that immediately attacked their pockets. The second thing they had seen, of course, which we'll celebrate this coming weekend, is not so much the resurrection of Lazarus, which surprisingly seemed to leave them quite untouched, but the fact that Jesus had entered into Jerusalem and people had welcomed him as a Messiah. And they were not worried so much about the fact that he might be a Messiah, but what the effect of that might be on their relationship with the Romans. They had a good relationship with the Romans, rather like anybody who fits in nicely with their conquerors and oppressors. It is in their interest to keep their mouths shut and to carry on going as they were before. They can go through all the motions of faith, but they don't actually need to have any faith themselves. They can say to themselves, with some justice, that it appears to us that keeping quiet and allowing things to continue with these barbaric Romans is going to help us to develop. It's rather like, say there's a very strong power in this world at the moment that's bullying everybody else, then to simply say, okay, well, the reality is that if we don't fall in with them, we'll come off badly. And therefore, we'll fall in with them. We'll bow down towards their desires and greed. That will go far better for the people in charge than to say, what you're doing is wrong, and we're not going to do it, and neither should anybody else. That sort of statement goes down like a lead balloon. And the Lord's actions had also gone down like a lead balloon with the Jewish high and mighty. And so they had concocted a way of crucifying him. Now, that was, from their point of view, that was enough. But then the Lord did the dirty on them by rising from the dead. And rising from the dead really attacked everything they stood for, absolutely everything. Obviously, it showed that they were in the wrong, that they had crucified the Messiah. But they were people who didn't really believe in the resurrection. So if somebody rose from the dead, it showed the resurrection did happen and had happened. And Lazarus had been risen from the dead, and now the Lord had risen himself from the dead. And that then attacked their entire being. Clearly, if these two had risen from the dead, and there's a possibility of resurrection of both the just and the unjust from the dead, and St. Paul probably, when he said about unjust, would have looked meaningfully at the high priest, then they might need to scratch their bottoms with more fervour and think about what they should be doing to change their way of life. So this is why they were really upset. It was about the resurrection of the dead in the end, because the resurrection means that in the end, there's a higher court who will judge you. Okay? But Festus, listening to this, will be thinking, this is a religious matter. We Romans are not bothered about religious matters, not at the moment. So long as everybody stays inside their boxes and nobody, to mix metaphors, rocks the boat, we don't care. Okay? Just don't care. So, not interested in these things. But it appears that Festus, which we'll discover tomorrow, has actually quite an accurate idea about what Christianity really is. And he develops an interest in it. He's not to the point where he wants to do anything about it, but he develops an interest in it. Okie dokie, that is where we're going to end. Lent this year has been very challenging for Joan. Well, I can only say good. Lent is meant to challenge us. It's meant to be very difficult. It's meant to take us well away from our comfort zones, put us in places we don't really want to be. Evan Escabadis, greetings from Angelo in Melbourne, Australia. Thank you very much indeed for your blessing. Angelo, may your blessing rebound upon you as well, give you an evening perfect, peaceful, and unashamed. Okay, there are some people to pray for. I asked you yesterday to pray for Nicholas particularly, and I'm sure you have done. I'm grateful for that. Please carry on praying for him. His sister Gabriella is going right now to Cyprus to go to see him and be by his bedside. Nicholas has been asking for her to come, so it is time for her to go. So if you pray for a safe journey for her and an easy death for him and a good judgment seat, a good place before the great judgment seat of Christ when that time comes. Pray for Nicoletta and for Nicoletta, for Daniel, for Hilary, who's still undergoing treatment for cancer, for Joseph and for Simon, for Christina, for Carol, Andrei, for Georgia and for Jane, for Hector and for Angie. Pray for them all, please. And better keep my eyes open because they're so full of pollen. Car is absolutely covered with pollen at the moment. I live very close to a wood, which is mainly, it's called birchwood. The area is called birchwood. There's a mixture of birch and oak, both of which produce quantities of pollen at this time of the year. And quantities of pollen have got themselves into my eyes, making them water. There we go. Nothing to worry about there. Okay, so God bless you and keep you. God willing, tomorrow, same time, same place, and I hope that everybody else has a good day. If you like this, please put on the thumbs up. If you disliked it, please put the thumbs down. Both of them do me good. I can see there's Bev has turned up. Good morning, Bev. Matthew Franklin. He's not changed his name on here. This is, of course, Father Panagiotis. God bless you and keep you, Father Panagiotis. God willing, I shall be there before long. He's going to prepare the church for this evening, and then I shall head back to the monastery. We have no fewer than 2 deacons at the liturgy this evening, which will be great fun, especially for the 2 deacons as they get in each other's way and irritate each other beyond measure. Right, God bless you and keep you. You change your name and other things. Anyway, there we are. Okay, Bev, please give your little dog a stroke from me. Okay, bye everybody. I still haven't got a dog, by the way. Been looking for one for ages now, and not even for ready money I'll be able to get a dog. There we go. I shall have to go to Australia and steal one of Miss Connie's kangaroos. Okay, bye-bye then. Oh, good morning to Alice. God bless you and keep you. Keep happy during fasting. That is always a very good idea. In fact, exactly the right sort of attitude towards fasting. Fasting should be a joyful thing. And if it isn't, guess what? Stop fasting. Righto, bye-bye then. Oh, if you could pray for those people going to be received here on Saturday, that is Ryan, that is Edward, Lucinda, Georgia, and Anthony. Five of us going to be received. So God bless you and keep you. Bye-bye then.